On May 25, 2008, a large and violent tornado would tear directly through the south sections of Parkersburg, Iowa. In this video, I will be analyzing the environment leading up to the tornado, the damage it caused, and how far Parkersburg has come since the tornado. This is the Parkersburg EF5, Iowa's forgotten nightmare. On the Day 1 outlook, the Storm Prediction Center would issue a moderate risk, which would just barely include Parkersburg. There would be a 15% hatch tornado risk to the north of town, and Parkersburg would just barely be included in the 10%. At 3:30 p.m., the Storm Prediction Center would issue a PDS, or Particularly Dangerous Situation Tornado Watch, for a large portion of Iowa for destructive tornadoes, large hail to 3 inches in diameter, and thunderstorm wind gusts of up to 80 miles per hour. At 4:22 p.m., the National Weather Service would issue the first tornado warning for the cell, and just over 20 minutes later, at 4:48 p.m., a tornado would be on the ground near Parkersburg. The tornado would initially touch down to the south of West Brook Street and cause damage at EF0 intensity, and it would move to the east-northeast, causing some EF2 to EF4 damage along Keystone Avenue, and this is when it would make its way into the southern portions of Parkersburg, inflicting EF5 damage near Conn Street along with Circle Drive and the Legend Trail Golf Course. You can see that the tornado mainly stayed in the south portions of town, and there you can see that there's not many trees today, and everything looks a lot newer than northern Parkersburg. And this would move east of town, the tornado, and near the Codner Cemetery, it would continue to cause EF4 damage along 325th Street, and it would track eastward for a while, going just north of New Hartford, Iowa, and near the Oak Hill Cemetery, it would inflict some more EF5 damage before doing kind of like a loop, like we saw with the Moore 2013 Newcastle Moore EF5, and the tornado would continue to track just north of Beaver Valley Road, inflicting EF0 damage, and then we had some EF2 damage here near the Avenue of the Saints, and then you could see the damage swath would widen a lot, but the damage was a lot more widespread and weaker, but still inflicting some EF2 damage. And then the tornado would go through this weird loop segment where it was just going all around. This is one of those tornadoes with the weirder paths. And it would continue EF2 damage for miles and miles near East Cedar, Wapsie Road, before finally roping out just to the north of Dunkerton, Iowa, the northeast of Dunkerton, Iowa. So the path was over 41 miles. So this is one of the longer tracking tornadoes. So you could see it started to the south of Applington, tracked through Parkersburg. Obviously, that is why it is called the Parkersburg tornado. So that's what we're looking at in terms of the path. This image that I found on Reddit is actually one of the best examples of showing how parts of Parkersburg were untouched, but then the southern portions were heavily damaged. You can see we're about in the middle of the photo. Everywhere below that is just completely destroyed, but above that there's still many trees. This was an aerial shot taken the day after the tornado, so it really just shows how some areas were not impacted and others were absolutely destroyed. Even though the Parkersburg EF5 is the focus of this video, I think it's important to note that that is not the only tornado that the state of Iowa saw that day. You can see shortly, just barely to the east of where the Parkersburg tornado lifted, just south of Hazleton, a EF3 tornado would touch down, and this one would track for 32 miles with a path width of just over 1,000 yards. So this would go south of Aurora, Lamont, and it would impact the southern portions of Dundee, Iowa, before eventually lifting just to the southwest of Greeley, Iowa. There were also a few EF1s. This one was to the north of Masonville, tracked for 3.5 miles, and this one was to the north of Dyersville. Thankfully, it missed that mobile home park, but that one tracked for 8.5 miles. Unfortunately, the Parkersburg EF5 is one of the more difficult tornadoes to do damage analysis on, as it is not on the damage assessment toolkit, so we cannot view each individual damage indicator, but this image found on Wikipedia is the EF5 damage indicator slabbed home just north of New Hartford, Iowa. And you can see there's almost nothing left. You can see where the home is in the left part of your screen, and you can see just a little bit of debris left, and everything else was swept away. At the time of the tornado touchdown, which was just before 5 p.m. Central Daylight Time, there was between 2,500 and 3,500 joules per kilogram of mixed layered CAPE, which stands for convective available potential energy in the region. What this does is it helps the storm's updraft rotate more, and this will help produce stronger tornadoes, and this is one of the key elements in storm and tornado formation. This resource, which was provided to me by Roman the Weather Guy, shows the average construction of a wooden home, the flooring in Parkersburg. Now, there is an exception. A few of these were rocks, but this is what the average construction is, and this is what most of the homes that were rated with EF5 damage indicators construction looked like on the floor level. The failure with the structure typically occurred near the wall stud and wall bottom plate, and even the J-bolt or straps would be pulled out in the most intense cases. This image is a damage indicator of a well-built steel structure, which was slabbed and with a wind estimate of 205 miles per hour. This image was taken in the southern portions of Parkersburg, and this shows some of the high-end EF3 to mid-range EF4 damage, as the EF5 damage is further south. Many of the homes in this image use the construction type that I talked about earlier in the video. Here is another image of a destroyed home in southern Parkersburg looking to the north-northeast. The footage you are about to see can be found on the Weather Channel's YouTube page and is a security camera at the First State Bank in southern Parkersburg, and you can see on this camera footage that a home was completely destroyed, so I am going to roll the clip. This building was where the security camera was, and it was looking towards the top of the screen, and the bank's damage was rated EF2, with homes north of their rated EF4 and south of their EF3 intensity. This image shows the damage indicator, which is damage indicator 20, that would get the bank the high-end EF2 damage rating. You can see the description says a south-facing wood-framed wall on the bank building had been pushed inward, which pivoted about its base. Damage indicator 16 assessed to the high school, which would be rated a mid-range EF4 at 180 miles per hour, as the gym would collapse. The west wing would also collapse at a low-end EF4 intensity from the tornado. In the first kilometer of the atmosphere, there would be just about 200 to 250 SRH in the region. You could see the P is where the Parkersburg tornado would initially touch down. So now we're going to take a look at more of the damage using Google Maps. Unfortunately, Google Maps Street View, the first image was taken after the tornado. This is about 3 months after the tornado, and this is in the southern portions of Parkersburg, but you can see how a lot of cleanup is being done, and there aren't many trees or buildings. Where we can see the before and after of the tornado, though, is on Google Earth Pro using the satellite imagery. So this photo was taken about 11 months before the tornado on June 14th, 2007, and this next image is taken on July 8th, 2008. So that's about a month, just over a month after the tornado, and you can really see all the buildings missing and how much less green it is in southern Parkersburg. This is where some of the most intense damage occurred. As you can see, you can follow that damage path through here, and then it gets a bit harder to track as there's less and less buildings. But if we go north of New Hartford, you can also see that's where some of that damage was, where there were those houses. So that's what we can see taking a look at the damage path. Alright, so taking a look at the population of Parkersburg, you can see in the years leading up to the tornado, they would maintain roughly 1,800 to 1,900. And in 2009, a year after the tornado, they actually saw a spike. So from 2008 to 2009, about 300 people moved into the city of Parkersburg. And then in 2010, that dropped, and they lost about 200 of those residents, if my math is correct. And then through the 2010s, they maintained population from around 1,900 to 2,000 people, and it looks like they've kept up that pattern today, with 2023 the population sitting at 1,983 people in Parkersburg. Taking a look at the damage survey, which can be found online in PDF format, the preliminary injury amount was about 70 from the tornado, with New Hartford and Parkersburg combined, which ended up being relatively close to the final number. Fatalities, after the survey was complete, they would find out that tragically 9 people would lose their lives. 7 of those would be in Parkersburg and 2 in New Hartford. So with the preliminary, 5 of those were in Parkersburg, 1 in New Hartford. And obviously they added the rest of those to the final survey, although I can't seem to find that again. And if we continue to go down on the survey, we can actually see some more radar data. So this is what the supercell looked like at 5:08 p.m. just east of Parkersburg. You can see there on the 2D and the 3D. So there's the tornado in there, and it was a very strong representation on radar, so definitely indicative of a very strong tornado. That is going to be the end of this video analysis of the Parkersburg, Iowa, May 25th, 2008 EF5 tornado. If you did enjoy, please be sure to like and subscribe. And as always, I hope to see you all in the next one. Peace.